Day of Lord Varaha. And yesterday evening, almost the very same presentation was made on the Ekadasi day because of a mix-up of calendars. We did that sequence. But in honor of one of the principal Leela avatars, Varaha, we're going to be honoring him this morning on his appearance day. In the course of this presentation, there's lots of photographs, paintings, deities, carvings, etc., from many different periods of time, even in many different parts of the world where Lord Varaha is known and celebrated. Here's one. It's a mask made of bronze in Kerala, 17th century. And we discussed yesterday evening something that I had forgotten, that in Tirupati, here's a photograph of the deity of Adivara Swami in Tiramala. On his lap, there's Lakshmi. On his left or our right, his leg is up, according to the pujaris there. This deity is very similar to the Vaikhanasa Agama description of the deity of Lord Varaha. And on their own website, the TTD folks say, according to legend, so we'll say it that way, according to legend, Varaha, after killing Hiranyakashipu, went to Tiramala and rested for some time, and thus the place is known as Varaha Kshetra. And according to legend, when Venkateshwara wanted to also establish his temple there, according to Brahma Purana, that was granted, and then there are some conditions, two conditions mentioned in Brahma Purana. The food, the bhoga offerings should be first offered to Varahadeva, then offered to Lord Venkateshwar. And then the other is that the pilgrims, those who visit to see the deity of Venkateshwar, should first pay their respects at the temple of Sri Adivara Swami, who you see pictured here. And originally it's known, the place, these 7 hills, known as Adivara Kshetra. So there's some connection between Adivaraha or Varaha and the current worship, even till today. Some of you may be familiar with the statement that Prabhupada makes in one purport in relation to the Varaha story or narration in the 3rd canto. The statement is made that Maitreya, when speaking about this form of the Lord to Vidura, because the question from Vidura was about the form of the Lord, Varaha, he made no distinction between the 2 times and 2 different pastimes of Lord Varaha when he appeared, but rather because it's one incarnation, he blended them into one narration. But there are 2 forms. During each day of Brahma, Lord Varaha appears twice. And here's the description found in the 3rd canto Srimad Bhagavatam of the benefit that one will derive from hearing what we're about to describe. This is Varaha's appearance day, and here's the Palastuti. If, with an attitude of devotional service, one hears and describes this auspicious narration of Lord Bora's pastimes, which are worthy of description, the Lord, who is within the heart of everyone, is very pleased. Nothing remains unachieved when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased with someone. By transcendental achievement, one understands everything else to be insignificant. One who engages in transcendental loving service is elevated to the highest perfectional stage by the Lord Himself, who is seated in everyone's heart. Now this is the Bhagavatam's reference. Now we're going to go to Rupa Goswami's Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Most of you know, Laghu Bhagavatamrita is focused on one topic. It's a very large book, published now by the BBT, written by Rupa Goswami. And its focus is the avatars of the Supreme Lord. Ultimately, the unique position of Krishna as the source of all avatars. The avatars of the Supreme Lord. And when he's discussing the avatar of Vamana, here's something that the translation of what he wrote. The boar avatar advented twice. First, during Swayambhuva Manvantar, from the nostril of Brahma, in order to lift up the earth. And a second time during Chakshusha Manvantar, appearing from the water, and killed Hiranyaksha. So we're going to look at these two, the Swayambhuva and the Chakshusha forms of Varaha that appeared. So note, this is text 11. There's a few verses in between that and 16 that are describing the first of the forms of Varaha appearing during Swayambhuva Manu could not. He gives the scriptural references why it could not, and this is a summary of why it could not have been the same as the killing of Hiranyaksha. So here's the conclusion of those scriptural references. At the beginning of Brahma's day, during Swayambhuva Manu's reign, his two sons, that's Priyavrata and Uttanapada, two sons, did not yet have offspring at the beginning. One hears only of the birth of his sons and daughters, Devahuti, Prasuti, Akuti, and his two sons. Thus, at that time, this is at the beginning of Brahma's day, there were no Prachetas, Daksha, or Deity. Swayambhuva had a son named Uttanapada. In his line, the Prachetas appeared. Their son was Daksha. He had a daughter named Deity. Deity was married to Kashyapa and bore Hiranyaksha. Thus, since Hiranyaksha was born long after Swayambhuva Manvantar, meaning after the earlier stages of his, because this event, Hiranyaksha being killed, did not occur. We'll continue. Since Hiranyaksha was born long after the Swayambhuva Manvantar, the firstborn avatar who appeared during Swayambhuva Manu's time could not have been killed, could not have killed him. Varaha couldn't have killed Hiranyaksha because he didn't appear yet. Therefore, it should be understood that when the first boar avatar appeared, he simply lifted the earth from the ocean. So when we think of Varaha, it's just put together with killing Hiranyaksha. But the distinction is being made. No. 2 times, one time just lifting the earth from the ocean, and the second time lifting the earth from the ocean and killing Hiranyaksha. And the first time was during Swayambhuva Manu's time, period, and the other was during the Chakshusha period. Now comes, this is text 16, here comes text 18. Now how was there a flood during Swayambhuva Manu's time? Because we know that when there's a change of Manus, there's a partial devastation. And then the water recedes, and then the next Manu and everything starts up again. Brahma recreates that which was destroyed, and life goes on. So this isn't at a change of Manus, it's during Manu's reign. So how do we understand there was a flood during his reign? It is mentioned in the Matsya Purana that there was a pralaya during Swayambhuva Manu's reign because of a curse of Agastya Rishi upon Swayambhuva. So curse, partial flood, earth was submerged, and Varaha appeared and lifted the earth. So we're going to see now some paintings that are just, there's no Hiranyaksha, there's just Lord Boar rescuing the earth. This is a B.G. Sharma painting, very colorful. Here's a BBT painting. Notice the color of Lord Varaha is red, to conform with what Prabhupada said. This is during the Swayambhuva Manu reign. There's the red incarnation and the white incarnation. You see the demigods up there in the sky. Here's another BBT painting. Lord Varaha is red. And some artists didn't necessarily pay attention to this part, or there may be other narrations and other Puranas. Here he is a kind of a turquoise blue. And here he is green. And there we see Bhu Devi being lifted by his arm, and there's the earth planet being lifted by his tusk. Similarly, the earth being lifted by his tusk. And in Tibet, here's a carving, something like a deity, depicting Lord Varaha. And I don't know where this place is. Does anybody know where this place is?
India.
It's India?
Central India.
Central India? Okay.
Huh?
You know the place.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
You've heard of the place. So this looks like it's on the outside of a temple, carving on the outside of a temple. Here it doesn't say where. This is a painting somewhere South India. And so this is the Swayambhuva Manvantar Lord Varaha, where he simply lifts the earth and relieves the earth from being in the ocean, from a curse of Agastya Rishi. Now we're going to go to the Chakshusha Manu, text 19 from the same section. It is mentioned in the Vishnu Damottara, that's a Purana, that by the will of the Lord, there was a sudden deluge during the reign of Chakshusha Manu, not the change of Manus, but during his reign. Varaha appeared at that time to lift the earth up, which had become submerged, and also killed Hiranyaksha. So this is the Hiranyaksha is during the Chakshusha Manu, a form of the Lord. Here's Lagu Bhagavatamrita indicating where the Lord's abode is. And again, the Vishnu Damodara Purana gives evidence that some avatars have abodes within the material universe. And he gives two examples. Nri Varaha is said to reside in Maharloka. That's directly a statement from Vishnu Damodara Purana. What's Nri Varaha? Well, this is yet a third Varaha. There's red, Rakta Varaha, Sweta Varaha, and now there's Nri Varaha. The Rakta and Sweta Varahas, they're four-legged. That's Rupa Goswami's language, looks like a boar. There's a third, that Nri Varaha, that like Lord Nrsingadev, Nrihari, half man, half lion. So it's another form of Varaha who is said to reside on Maharloka. Maharloka is just above Swargaloka. Then Janaloka, Tapaloka, Brahmaloka, it's just above Swargaloka in the structure of the universe. Then there's another, the four-legged Varaha, the beautiful and self-effulgent realm, Varahaloka, touches the material universe as it stands beneath everything. That means the below the Patala planet, in the lower planetary regions, and in the same region as Kalagni, Rudra. Kalagni, Kala means time, and Agni means fire. So it's the place where the 11 Rudras stay, where they were sent by Brahma till the time of universal devastation was needed. They're in this Kalagni Rudra region. Elsewhere in the Bhagavatam it's called the Mahakala region, the great time. When there's devastation, that's great time. There's other places where Mahakala term is also used, and I won't go into that, it might cause confusion. But there's a meaning. So this is where Varaha Loka, at least one of the realms where Varaha resides, in this just beneath the lower planetary systems. But that's not too terribly awful. We know that Vamana, he resides in Sutala, one of the lower 7 planetary systems, protecting the gate of Bali, who rules at Sutala, at least for some period of time. So the Lord can have abodes anywhere. He can appear from anywhere and he can reside anywhere, but he has an abode. And this is some evidence. So we heard, if you remember, the Varaha from the Swayambhuva Manu appeared from the nostril of Brahma. Brahma was contemplating what to do, the earth is submerged, what to do. While he was contemplating, Lord Varaha appeared from his nostril and then grew and grew and grew and grew and became really big and plunged into the Garbhodak ocean and rescued the earth. No battle with Hiranyaksha at that time. But then when he appears from the water, which we heard at the beginning, when he appeared from the water, where was it that he appeared from? Well, he can appear from the water. He can appear from any atom of water. He can appear from anywhere. However, it doesn't say this, but very near to the Garbhodak ocean is this Varahaloka. Anyway, that's a deductive possibility, but we don't know. He appeared from the water. Now, this Chakshusha Manu Varaha has its connection with the descendants of Uttanapada, in the line of Uttanapada. That starts in Canto 4. And as we go further in Canto 4, we get to King Praccinibari. There's several kings after Dhruva. And King Praccinibari had the Prachetas as his sons. The Prachetas were sent by their father to purify themselves so they can produce praja. The Prachetas did so. They came out of the sea after 10,000 years of meditation. Several things happened. They received a wife from whom they could have good praja. Daksha was born as the son of the Prachetas. Daksha was born as the son of the Prachetas. Daksha also received a very qualified wife, and from that qualified wife, there were 10,000 sons, 100 sons, and 60 daughters. And the 60 daughters, this is all described in Canto 6. We just jumped from Canto 4 to Canto 6. In Canto 6, Prajapati Daksha had these 60 daughters. The 60 daughters were given in marriage to different rishis. 13 of those 60 daughters were given in marriage to Kashyapa. Actually, it was said, we'll hear it shortly, the queens, the daughters were asked who would they like to marry. Apparently they had some choice in the matter. And the ones that wanted to marry Kashyapa married Kashyapa. 13 of them. So one of the daughters of Daksha was Deity, and Deity, together with Kashyapa, gave birth to Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Now, notice at the very bottom, Laghu Bhagavatamrita states that this situation occurred not during Swayambhuva Manu, but during Chakshusha Manu. And the Sweta Varaha appeared at this time too. So the son of Deity came during Chakshusha Manu, and the appearance of Varaha came during Chakshusha Manu. We already heard how did the flood come? The will of the Lord. During the reign of Chakshusha Manu, during the reign of any Manu, there's normally not a flood, but by the will of the Lord, there was a flood, a pralaya, during his reign, for his pastime purposes. So he could appear, rescue the earth, and kill Hiranyaksha. Now Prabhupada, many of us have heard Prabhupada's description. The reason why the earth fell out of orbit was Hiranyaksha's greediness in gathering gold from different places. And Prabhupada very clearly describes he dug a tunnel through the middle of the earth and came out the other side, somewhere in Brazil, took gold from Brazil, brought it through the tunnel, and helped build Lanka. And because of displacement of that heavy metal gold to such a degree, the earth fell out of orbit. That's Prabhupada's explanation. And it plunged into the Garbhodak ocean. What Rupa Goswami says is the Lord, by his own will, caused a pralaya. So the two stories don't necessarily have to contradict one another, or it could be different days of Brahma. That's another very simple way of responding, because some description here is this day of Brahma, some description there is that day of Brahma, and they're just different days of Brahma. I'm mentioning that just for passing. So this is Canto 6, where we hear about the daughters of Daksha being married to various rishis. Here's the narration of the pastime from Canto 3. Now, the narration of the Bhagavatam is not confined to chronology. It's not chronologically sequenced. This is one of the distinctions between Puranas and Itihasas. Itihasas are chronologically sequenced and primarily focused on one person. The Puranas are not chronologically sequenced. They're logically, but not chronologically sequenced, and they're not primarily focused on one person. Although the Bhagavatam certainly is focusing on Krishna as the personality of Godhead, and all others are expansions of him, still it's not primarily focused on one person, like the Itihasas are. So, in this Puranic Bhagavad Purana, we find, as you see in the painting, here's Maitreya, who's in the North Country, being visited by Vidura. And Vidura meets Maitreya. They have wonderful exchange, greeting one another. And Vidura places inquiries before Maitreya, who responds. So in one of those inquiries, from Vidura to Maitreya, Vidura wants to know about Varaha. And Maitreya narrates the history of Varaha. He makes no distinction between the two Varahas. He blends them into one, because that was the question. It was about Varaha. But the one that is connected to the Chakshusha Manu and the appearance of Hiranyaksha begins like this. This is Deity, one of the 13 daughters of Daksha, given in marriage to Kashyapa, who is pictured here, doing his yajna at sunset. And Deity has been struck by the arrows of Cupid and is out of control. And she's also a little envious that her other sisters, who are Kashyapa's wives, have children. She doesn't have children yet. And so I'm going to read. I think that's all right. This is taken from Canto 3, where it's describing the scene. Well, I think I'll narrate it rather than read it. Deity, Kashyapa is engaged in yajna at sunset. And Deity comes and doesn't show female shyness at all. She's very explicit and saying she's overwhelmed with lusty desire. And she appeals to her husband to fulfill her lusty desire. And his reply is, you have served me very nicely, and the strength of a good husband is in the quality of his good wife. The good wife is like a fortress that protects the good husband. So surely I'm indebted to you. Surely I will satisfy you. But my request is you just wait a little while, because the time is inauspicious. This time of sunset is a time when Lord Shiva is traveling around with his ghostly followers. And because Lord Shiva, having 3 eyes and being able to see everything, will know of violating this injunction, because the ghosts then would like to take birth in the wombs of women who conceive a child during inauspicious times. So just wait, and your desire will be fulfilled. I'll read this part. In spite of receiving such good instruction from her husband, Deity was so oppressed by sex desire that she caught hold of Kashyapa's clothes just as a shameless prostitute, and thus she practically forced him to gratify her lusty urge. So he did so, and then after he did so, he took his sacred bath and sat down to perform practices for purification. And Deity, after the fact, realized it was a big mistake. She was overwhelmed with that pushing of lust, and it was a big mistake. So, my dear Brahmana, please ensure that my embryo was not killed by Lord Shiva because of the great offense that I've committed against him. Then Deity makes her own prayer to Lord Shiva. As Deity stood before her husband, trembling in fear, due to fear of his anger, Kashyapa said, because of your polluted mind, the improper time, your disobedience, and your neglect of the demigods, your conception will produce two abominable sons who will create havoc within the world by killing innocent persons, torturing women, and enraging the great souls. As a result, the Supreme Lord will incarnate to kill them, just as Indra smashes mountains with his thunderbolt. Deity replied, "O my husband, it is a great relief for me to know that my sons will be killed by the all-merciful Supreme Lord, rather than the wrath of the Brahmanas. One who offends the Brahmanas or causes fear to others is so condemned that even those who are already in hell or who are of the degraded species in which he will later on appear feel no compassion toward him." So Kashyapa then says, due to your repentance and your firm faith in the Supreme Lord and your adoration for Lord Shiva and myself as your husband, a Brahmana husband, you'll have a benediction along with this bad outcome. Your grandson will be a great devotee, Prahlad, and he'll be honored as much as the Supreme Lord is honored, and this is a blessing that will come to you. So after observing this fearful condition during Diti's pregnancy, the entire universe became disturbed. The light of the sun and the moon became impaired. So many inauspicious omens. The demigods, seeing all this, approached Brahma, and they spoke to Brahma, saying, "Look at this. We can't do our service. What's going on, and what's to be done about it?" And then Brahma told them of the following history. This is another familiar painting. The four Kumaras coming to the gates of Vaikuntha, Jai and Vijay prohibiting them from entering, and then the four Kumaras become very upset and curse. I'll read. But first there's a section in this third canto that's very nice, transcendentally nice. It describes the kingdom of God. It describes the Vaikuntha realm. What's it like there? It's a very good travel advertisement. One should want to go. And they come to the gate, they're checked. The four Kumaras exclaim, "Who are these persons who are engaged in the Lord's service and yet have developed a discordant mentality. They must be impostors. And so they suspect others to be like themselves. In Vaikuntha, there is perfect harmony between the Supreme Lord and the other inhabitants. These two persons are dressed like residents of Vaikuntha, but where has this seed of disharmony come from? Because of seeing duality, they have become contaminated, therefore they should be put into the material world where everyone is conceived of as being a friend or enemy. As the curse hasn't been uttered yet, the giant Vijay acknowledge we're deserving of some punishment. We pray that you mercifully ensure that the illusion of forgetting the Supreme Personality of Godhead will not overwhelm us as we fall down. And then Lord Narayan comes, being all-knowing. There's this commotion at the gate. He comes, Lakshmi is with him, and there's this nice exchange between the Kumaras and Lord Narayan. Narayan and the four Kumaras. They take blame for the wrongdoing. He takes blame for the wrongdoing of giant Vijay, and the curse is upheld. They're to take 3 births as demons. So they took births as demons. This is Brahma now explaining what happened. So this pregnancy of Deity is that. It's giant Vijay fulfilling the curse of the 4 Kumaras. So I searched for a nice painting of Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, and here's what I came up with. From another part of India, and the time of that painting is there. So it's depicting both Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu did austerities, got benedictions from Brahma, and they're feeling invincible. And on the right side is the green-colored Hiranyaksha going off with his weapon to conquer all directions on behalf of his brother. And as he travels here and there, I'll read. It's a nice description. It says that the giant Vijay were in the wombs of Deity as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu for 100 years. And I assume that's celestial years, maybe not. And while in the womb, there's like the list description of the bad omens. Very, very, very bad. Kashyapa named the firstborn, who was formerly Jaya, as Hiranyakashipu, and Hiranyaksha, and the one who was Hiranyaksha was born first, but he was conceived second. So he's the younger brother. And the one who was conceived first, who was formerly Vijaya, was named Hiranyakashipu. Soon after their birth, the demoniac twins exhibited uncommon bodily features. Those are pretty uncommon features. And their steel-like frames became so tall that they seemed to touch the sky. Indeed, they blocked the view in all directions, and as they walked, the earth shook with every step. After performing great austerities, Hiranyakashipu received benedictions from Lord Brahma, and as a result he became unafraid of death and very proud, something similar to Hiranyaksha. To satisfy his elder brother, Hiranyaksha took his club and began to travel all over the universe with a fighting spirit. Because no one was able to kill him due to Brahma's benediction, even the demigods fearfully hid upon seeing Hiranyaksha, just as snakes hide out of fear of Garuda. He went to the heavenly realm, the realm of King Indra, and the place was empty because they ran in fear. He went into the ocean to the abode of Varuna, and in the abode of Varuna, he confronted Varuna, paid obeisances to Varuna, and said, "Please grant me this benediction that we can have a fight." And Varuna was disturbed by his arrogance, but checked his disturbance and said to him, "I'm old, you're so strong and powerful. The only one that I can think of that is a suitable candidate for battle with you is Lord Vishnu. So if you can find Lord Vishnu, you'll have yourself some happiness, a good battle, and you'll be put to death." So he went off looking for Vishnu. He came across Narada, who told him where he could find Lord Vishnu. He's at the bottom of the ocean rescuing the earth. So he went again into the ocean, and sure enough, he found Lord Varaha rescuing the earth. Notice that they must be the same artist, because he has similar mouth and similar color and same kind of pants. And he's got a club in his hand. And then a battle begins. So there's Lord Varaha on the left, Hiranyaksha on the right, and then there's many, many, many paintings showing the battle. It's a very celebrated event. There's Hiranyaksha down at the bottom. There's the earth at the top. And in the middle is Lord Varaha rescuing the earth and killing Hiranyaksha. Now, when the battle was going on between the two, Lord Varaha was playing and playing and playing. Like the example is like a cat playing with a mouse. The mouse is caught. The demigods were afraid, saying the night is approaching quickly. The Abhijit period that started in the morning is now about to end. Demons become more powerful, finish him. So in this next painting, it shows Brahma on the upper right. There's the earth in the center. And you know who down at the bottom there. And Varaha zooming through through space. Again, the battle scene, earth and his tusks, and Hiranyaksha being chopped. Hiranyaksha, seeing how powerful Lord Varaha was, he made himself invisible. And as he was making himself invisible, he started sending mystical weapons coming flying from the sky, which is pictured in this next painting. Well, before this, Hiranyaksha throws his club. Lord Varaha captures the club, and he falls. He tells Hiranyaksha, "Pick up your club again." Instead, he picks up a trident and hurls the trident. And with his Sudarshan chakra, the Lord chops the trident into pieces. Varaha comes, and Hiranyaksha comes and tries to smash the Lord in his chest with his hard fist, and then disappeared. Thereafter, Hiranyaksha employed many conjuring tricks against the Lord, who is Yogeshwara, and all who saw the magical display thought that the dissolution of the universe was hand. So here's the painting showing. Fierce winds began blowing, and the dust that was raised created darkness in all directions. Torrents of stone fell from the sky, along with showers of pus, hair, blood, stool, urine, and bones. See over there on the left, there's some bones falling from the sky. Accompanied by lightning and thunder. Mountains discharged various weapons, and naked demonesses with their hair hanging loose suddenly appeared carrying tridents. Hosts of yakshas and rakshasas were heard uttering cruel and savage slogans as they marched on foot and rode up on horses, elephants, and chariots. So what did Varaha do? He raised his chakra, released his chakra, and all this, the apparitions disappeared. So now Hiranyaksha has to take another tact. He made himself visible. He tried to crush the Lord in his arms. That didn't work. Trying to grab the Lord, the demon found that he was still outside the circle of his arms. He struck the Lord with his fist. Lord Varaha slapped him indifferently at the rear of the ear, making him stagger backwards, and his eyeballs bulged, and he fell. Now this shows Lord Varaha hitting him with a club in the head, but he hit him with his hoof, or his forefoot, and smashed him behind the ear, and he fell dead. And there he is falling dead. There's a Tagore illustration. Nice, very nice artwork, 1880. There's the Varaha at the bottom. Excuse me, Hiranyaksha at the bottom. And here's a temple carving in Belur. Belur? Okay. Doesn't say where this is, but it gives the date. There's, at the bottom is Hiranyaksha. At the top, that's Bhudevi on his raised leg. And in the Durga temple, or on the outside of a Durga temple, similarly, nice carving. And in Nepal, gold, murti of Lord Varaha. Now, there's different descriptions, even within the Bhagavatam. In the Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, it states that the Lord pierced him with his tusk. And in Chapter 19, it states that he was struck by a forefoot of the Lord, or a hoof. And artists have their own way of depicting things. Again, bunked him on the head with his club and chopped him with the Sudarshan chakra. Now, this may be what's described in other Puranas. I don't know. But that's what the paintings show. And there's I learned a lot. So I spent a good amount of time yesterday going through piecing this part and that part and then the other part together and how to present it so it's not too bewildering. There are, the principle is, the Lord is unlimited and he can manifest himself in unlimited ways. And there are standard forms and there's variations of those standard forms and there's no restriction. It's not that if this one is right, then that one is not right. We go to authoritative sources, and according to authoritative sources, we accept the descriptions, because what do we know of what's in transcendence? But it's revealed, and the revelation tells us there are various manifestations of the same avatar, and at different times, and slightly varied themes of their pastimes. So this is the last slide. I'm going to take a break, go use the restroom, and I'll be right back. You can ask questions when I come back.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, so whenever there is annihilation, that's when the Lord, like the Lord comes as Varahadeva, Mother Earth goes into the ocean and then it comes. I got confused with that part.
I'm not sure what your question is. Say it again.
So you mentioned whenever there is partial annihilation during the Yugas, that both the forms of the Lord had come during that and lifted Mother Earth.
But these are exceptions. At the end of the day the end of each Manu's reign, there's so many yuga cycles during each Manu. At the end of Manu's reign, there's a partial annihilation. And the partial annihilation goes up to heaven and everything below, and the above 4 planetary systems are not in a flood. It's a cycle. So, when that happens, prior to the flood, there's a big fire, And the fire is put out by the flood, so everything is dissolved. And then at the end of each manu, then there's a new manu. The water recedes, and everything has to be rebuilt. So there isn't a rescue, because everything is there. We read in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, at the end, during that partial annihilation, there's a big fire, and it's so hot that the denizens of Maharloka go up to Tapaloka. They hang out for a while until the fire stopped. The fire stopped with water. The water recedes. You know, the flood, the Noah's Ark story, the biblical. You're familiar with that. So, and it's at the end of the partial is at the end of every manu. And there's 14 manus, and then there's the day of Brahma. Now, so your question has to do with, or the Varaha's appearance has to do with the exception. The exception is, during these two manus periods, there's an unprecedented flood. One caused by Agastya Rishi's curse, another caused by the Lord's will. An unprecedented flood. When that happens, the earth is rescued, Varaha comes and rescues. Not at the end of each manu, nor at the end of each day of Brahma.
I have another question. This is my own personal struggle when I hear these pastimes and all. They're very, I cannot relate to them.
In what way?
I can connect to them. I just hear them, but I can't feel like, oh wow, you know what? I mean, there's certain pastimes, especially with these partial annihilations and all, they're above my understanding. I don't know.
That's okay.
So, how do I even...
It's just part of how the universe... Just take the fifth canto. You maybe can't relate to the fifth canto, but it's part of knowledge. How is the universe structured? How is it built? How is it maintained? How is it annihilated? It's one of the functions of Vishnu. It's all this in Brahma and Shiva and Vishnu. It's the universe in which we live, and how's this machine working? So that it may be above your capacity to understand the technology or even the meaning of all of it. It's just, but the meaning in short, simple principle is there's a controller behind everything, and things move in cycles, the cycle of time. And as Kala Chakra moves, the wheel of time moves, things happen. And this is what happens as the wheel of time moves. So we're just these little people in a little speck of time, and what do we know about this greater wheel of time? But it's being revealed. You know, for example, when I was little, I heard God created heaven and earth. Fantastic. How did that happen? He just said it was going to happen, and it happened. Genesis. But then how it happened is unpacked in the Bhagavatam. And then, similarly, the flood. It's in the Bible. So it may not be a big deal to some people who read the Bible. It's more important to them other things that are there in the Old Testament, what to speak of the New Testament. So things may be more important to one person than another person, but it's the topics of the Bhagavatam are 10. And the creation and subcreation are 2 of them. And, what happens in between, the rules of the manus, this is part of that. So it's part of the big picture that may not be so. Why is it there? It's the big picture. Everything is resting upon the source of everything. And as everything comes, and is sustained and supported for some time, stuff happens. And this is a Purana, it's the history of stuff that happens. And then the Lord that appears in the midst of that stuff that's happening, that's of a particular interest. And the pastime, attractiveness of the pastime is he's protecting. And he's maintaining. And he's giving enlivenment. I mean, there must be, I'm guessing, but there must be more to the Adivara history in Tirupati than we just find on the website. They must have a whole series of katha that's connected to Varaha. And it's meaningful to them. And they worship him before they worship the main deity of the place. So he's important. So what are some of the details about this important personality? He protects the earth. He rescues the earth when the earth is in difficulty. And there are demons and demoniac forces. So in a smaller scale, here we are. And look around the world. And there's wars about to happen all over the place. And, what are we to do? We can become fearful or not become fearful. It's a dangerous place. For those who are invested in the temporary, it's dangerous. But there's the Lord's protection. So on some level, my Lord is so powerful, so amazing. And even the description in the Bhagavatam of his features, so attractive. Although it's the form of a hog, his features are so attractive, his eyes and his everything. Lovingly attractive hog. And all powerful. And from another perspective, for you, this is a fulfillment of the Supreme Lord's chivalrous spirit. He's not a pacifist. He has a chivalrous, everything is within him. And so this is an exhibition. Just let's check it out, see his chivalrous spirit. I mean, for example, in Ramayana, Mahabharata, I know young boys, that's their favorite part, is the battle scenes. And they know it backwards and forwards. And they really get excited. And they don't get attracted to things that you may be attracted to. They're attracted to that. I'm not so attracted to that. But it's part of the Lord's feature. And it's there in Krishna and Ram and Varaha, Nrsimha. So here's the Supreme Lord exhibiting his chivalrous spirit. So from that perspective, on the sense of the unlimited Supreme Lord and his ways of enjoying, and he's not limited to our narrow-mindedness. He is much bigger than our narrow-mindedness. And this is a feature of the Lord. Now, features of the Lord may be more attractive to some and not as attractive to others. So he, the Supreme Lord, reciprocates with our desires. But he's full, so he's fulfilling the desires of everyone, not just you and me. And there's some people that like that chivalry. And it's in him, so he exhibits it. Anything else? Yeah.
So, Marge, this is like about some of the details mentioned in yesterday evening's lecture. So, you mentioned like Daksha 1.0 and then Daksha 2.0. So, are they the same person?
Yes, same jiva, same soul.
Okay, so it's different life.
Yes, different
Okay.
life.
And then I would like add another
And
question.
similar propensities.
Thank you, Maharaj. I had another question regarding the pastime mentioned in Vaikuntha between the Lord and Lakshmi Devi, and how she got mad at Jaya, or she got transcendently angry at Jaya and Vijaya for blocking her path into coming into.
Yes, yes.
So was that like
Inspired by the Supreme Lord.
okay. So was it that like, and then it was mentioned that that's one of the reasons that Jaya and Vijaya came down, or that the Lord.
She wanted to see that they would be reprimanded. Narayan was fulfilling her desire. They were reprimanded. Good. Now they're going to be corrected from their, misbehavior. It's not retribution. It's not like, you offended me, I'm going to get you. It's not like that. Okay.
Yes, Maharaj. So then, like, so a lot of times we hear about like transcendentally angry or transcendental
It's
competition.
everything. Transcendental everything. It's transcendental everything.
Like, what does that like actually like look like?
What
or
it actually look like, it's variegated, but the meaning is not even a touch, not even a trace of the modes of nature or fruitive activity or prakriti, not even the speck. And it looks different according to different situations. I was recently reading about Satyabhama, and she had a transcendental envy. But the transcendental envy was for the pleasure of Krishna. So she was feeling, Rukmini got a parijata flower, I want a parijata tree. It's not like the material. She's getting the Lord's favor. I should get more favor than her. That's material. It's for the Lord's pleasure. And Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, if you go further in reading Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it gives those names and gives examples. And the gopis have that. There's competition between the right wing, left wing, and Krishna likes it. They do because Krishna likes it. Anger. Radharani becomes transcendentally angry. For the Krishna's pleasure. There's a nice description, Madhava Mahotsav, I think is the title of the book, where Radharani goes into one of her moods of anger and she disappears. Purnamasi goes looking for her because Krishna's maybe going to be unable to live without her. Purnamasi goes searching. She finds Radharani in a cabin talking to herself off in the forest, saying, why do I get like this? I know who he is, but So why do I get like this? And she gets like that because it's pleasing to Krishna. It's not the worldly kind of man. It's more pleasing to Krishna than the submissiveness. The submissiveness has its happiness too. And the feistiness has its happiness too. But it's not the feistiness of someone that's just simply contrary, egocentric contrariness. It's not like that. And we only, how do we think of it? Because we only know the mundane kind. And therefore there's the transcendental kind. That's what your question is. Beyond what does it look like? It's going to vary. But there's a principle. No touch of matter, modes, karma, self-centeredness. And then there's a flow, like waves in a river. The river flows, and the flow of those feelings move and move and move, and the waves change. You see in a river, the wave goes up and then it subsides, and then comes another wave, and then comes another wave, and it's unending. And rasa of transcendence is like that. And sometimes something rises, and then it subsides.
Thank you, Maharaj. We have some questions from online.
I'm ready.
So the first one is by Sneha Bali Devidasi. And she says, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, I've heard earlier that presently we are in Sveta Varaha Kalpa, which in today's class was mentioned that Sveta Varaha appeared in Chakshusha Manu. What is the correct understanding?
There's the life of Brahma is two prarardhas, and one is Rakta and the other is Sweta, prarardha. And that's it's given the term kalpa, but it's one half and the other half. So the half of Sweta kalpa is the terms sound similar, but they're not superimposed upon one another. The Sweta Varaha is just an indication of the color or complexion or luster of one of the Varaha forms that appears during a particular Manu, and that those Manus cycle so many times during each Yuga cycle during each Manu. So, don't confuse the two terms, is my answer.
And she has a second question. She asks, it was surprising to hear that Deity also had pregnancy for 100 celestial years. Kayadu also had Prahlad for 100 celestial years in her womb. Even knowing that Diti's son will be demoniac, Deity did not hear the glories of the Lord during her pregnancy. Could you please comment?
It's all a plan of the Supreme Lord. Now, we have the detail that Kayadu received a benediction from Narada Muni that her child would not be born until her husband came back. So that's a detail that we know. With Deity, the detail is not known. How did that happen? What was the cause, the circumstances?
Then we have a question from Ravi Shankar Prabhu, where he asks, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble Dandavat Pranam. My query is related to the role of Lord Shiva in the process of partial and full annihilation. Could you also please provide the reference to read from Srimad Bhagavatam?
Well, you're asking me in the middle of a class for the specific reference. I think you're going to have to do your own homework rather than make me do your homework for you and then send you the reference. You do your homework. Start searching because it's something you're interested in. Because that's what I could do it for you. No problem. But I'm going to be in a car today, heading for Grand Rapids. 5 hours sitting in a car. So I don't have so much discretionary time. You do the homework. It's there in our Acharya's writings and Prabhupada's writings.
There are no other online questions, but I had one more question
Okay.
regarding Rupa Goswami's Black Varaha. So, so are Black Varaha and Rakta Varaha the same?
Yeah. Yesterday evening, for those of you that are listening this morning, I remarked that Prabhupada speaks of the two Varahas being red, Rakta Varaha, and white, Sweta Varaha. In Rupa Goswami's Laghu Bhagavatamrita, however, consistently he makes no mention of Rakta, but he makes mention of blackish, like a cloud. So I don't know how to reconcile those two. One is the white one is there's no conflict or difference. And the other is Prabhupada speaking of red and Rupa Goswami speaking of dark or blackish. And so as far as I can understand, they're equivalent. The nomenclature is different, but they're equivalent. Anything else? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.